Hi, this is Julie Nariman. I'm the author of an article in the Big Life Journal about in concerning raising kids with a growth mindset, but specifically around helping teens with goal setting. I write the blog Classroom 325, which is about my experiences as a high school principal. And so I've been a high school principal in the Bronx of the High School of Language and Innovation for 7 years. I'm the founding principal of the high school, and it's a school for students who are newcomer English language learners. So I've been a principal for 7 years, and then before that, I was a teacher and assistant principal for 11 years. So I have 18 years of experiences working with teenagers, seeing them set goals that really worked for them and that taught them a growth mindset, and also seeing them set goals that let them down. So you are welcome to post questions, post comments. You can check out my blog, Classroom 325, where I have lots of examples of, our approach to teaching kids with a growth mindset. And you are welcome to check that out, as well as post any questions or comments that you have. And I will also be posing some questions to the group too, as we go on. So I wanted to start out by talking about examples of ways I've seen kids set goals effectively and not so effectively. So at our school, we have a very cool way of distributing report cards in that we don't simply hand out report cards and say, okay, everybody, here's your report card, go home, get your parents to sign it. We do a presentation to all of our students on what a growth mindset is and how no matter where you're starting from, whether you failed a class or whether you're disappointed by a grade, you can always start by looking at what you can improve, and there's always room for growth. In September, there's room for growth, but even at the end of the year in May, there's still room for growth. So we give our students their report cards, and then the students reflect on where they did well and also where they could have improved. And that usually goes really well. The kids are really thoughtful, they're honest with themselves, and it's intriguing to see their reflections on what it is they could do better. But the part that's tricky for all of us, the kids, the teachers, the administrators, is helping the kids set meaningful goals. So after the kids have identified what it is that they want to improve, they might say, okay, I really want my biology grade to go up, or I want to improve even in my physical education class, whatever it is for them that makes sense. That's where in the past we've run into trouble with goals, because all of a sudden the goal becomes a huge, ambitious proclamation. I'm going to get 100 on every test in biology from now on, might be their goal. Or I'm going to come on time for class every single day in gym, and I'm never going to be late, and I'm always going to remember to bring my gym clothes, and I'm going to participate in every activity no matter what. And so the kids set themselves up sometimes for failure, even though they might actually be making huge improvements along the way. So we've started at our school to look at how we can help kids set more measurable goals. There is a student named Brian who graduated from our school a few years ago. Brian was a student who came to this country not speaking a lot of English. He came from the Dominican Republic. He was a very dynamic, happy, sweet guy who made a lot of friends. He managed, in New York State, students have to pass 5 exams in order to graduate from high school. They have 4 years to pass a minimum of 5 exams. And Brian worked so hard, and he managed to pass the first 4 exams. But the last exam, which was English, was the most daunting for him. He managed to get through math, social studies, but the English exam, given his status as a newcomer English language learner, was really challenging. So his senior year, he set this goal: I'm going to pass English, I'm going to pass English, I'm going to work hard and pass English. And at the end of the year, he didn't pass English. And it was very devastating for him because, and for all of us, because we loved the student and We saw how much he put his heart into his work. But he didn't pass the exam, and so he didn't graduate with his class, which was a real letdown. And even though he had made a lot of improvements and shown a lot of effort, to him, he was a failure. I saw one of his teachers start to work very effectively with him. And over the course of the year, the teacher began to identify where it was that Brian was struggling in his work. And what the teacher realized is that Brian had a great knowledge of Spanish. Of course, not only was it his first language, but he was also a very voracious reader in Spanish and had read a lot of complex texts. And Brian hadn't been taking the time to look up a lot of words in Spanish. So he would take this huge text in English that, you know, these English exams typically have very long texts that the students have to read. And he would just say, my goal is to read and understand this text. And he wasn't taking that time to go on the more minute level and identify and underline the words that he didn't understand, look them up in a dictionary, because English language learners in New York State are allowed to use a bilingual dictionary on their exams as a support. So he wasn't taking the time to do that. So over the course of the year, the teacher said, you know what, you're going to make a new goal for yourself where it's not to understand the entire text, but it's to stop yourself when you see a word you don't understand, look it up. And even if it means that you end up looking up 50 words, you have such a strong knowledge of vocabulary in Spanish that that's going to help you. So take the time to look up the word, write the word, and then go back and read the sentence with your new understanding of what that word is. And the student had reached the point where he was a little bit impatient with this suggestion. He was like, no, my goal is to pass. I don't have time to look up every single word. I need to pass. I need to pass. I need to go through this whole text. But he wasn't looking at the fact that he wasn't getting it. You know, so eventually he developed a very strong relationship with this teacher, and he, you know, by June, because he progressed into June and July, because we had an extended summer school for some of the students. He finally bought into, okay, I'm going to patiently look up every single word, and that's my goal, and then I'm going to go back and read it. And this student, by making that his goal rather than I'm just going to pass, but okay, I'm really going to understand each sentence by looking up each word, that became his new goal. The student ended up not only passing the exam in summer, but he actually got a highly above average score. He ended up getting a score of about 80% out of 100, which according to New York State standards indicated that he was ready for college level reading. So that was an example for me, an inspiring example of how helping a teenager shift their goal for something that is huge and ambitious and a little bit vague, like I'm going to pass, to something that's very minute, like I'm going to look up the words I don't understand, became something that actually led to the student's goal, as opposed to keeping that vague goal and then ultimately not succeeding over and over again. So that's something that I really coach my teachers to do. And again, if anyone has any questions about how we help students break down their goals, I would be happy to address those. I have another example of a student who was a struggling student, and I'm going to give examples too of students who are high achievers, because that can be a different way sometimes of helping them break down their goals. Same ideas, but we had a student named Mary who she had these goals to pass all of her classes. And whenever she did her report card reflection, she would simply write as her goal, okay, I'm just going to pass all my classes. That's my goal. Mary's issue is that she would come late to school, so she had trouble waking up on time. And then she was friends with another young lady who also wanted to pass all of her classes, but they would get very tempted to hang out together or leave school early. So this became a huge academic and behavioral issue, because while these were two individually sweet, sweet, good-natured students, together they somehow pressured each other to sometimes do the wrong thing, like cut a class. And so Mary, in the 11th grade, she reached a point where I said, we have to have a serious talk, because you're not going to graduate on time. We have to have a talk with your family. You're not going to pass your classes if you continue to come late and cut, because you're missing at least 2 classes a day by doing this. What was so interesting about Mary was 2 shifts that took place with her. One was that she changed her goal from, I'm going to pass all of my classes, to, I'm going to get myself to school on time. We had a number of talks. We involved her parents. And over the summer, she seemed to reconsider what it is that she wanted, and realize that there's a very practical sense of setting my alarm, getting myself up. This is New York City, so catching buses or subways, not making an excuse of the bus or subway, and getting myself to class on time. And that really became her new goal, and when I asked her about it, she's like, yeah, I realized I just needed to get up on time and hold myself to it. It became everything from doing her hair in a certain way, knowing what she was going to wear ahead of time. And she also attached herself to different friends. So one of her friends, actually, the friend who she had been, kind of in cahoots with to leave early, they drifted apart, and Mary became friends with a new set of friends who were very academically inclined. They weren't A students, but they had a common goal to do well in their classes and to ultimately get into college. And I bring up Mary's example because Mary started her 12th grade year with so few of the exams that she needed, that I started the year thinking, okay, we have to come up with it in my mind, not necessarily telling Mary this, but saying, okay, we have to have a plan B. We have to have a 2-year plan for graduation for Mary, because I'm not sure she could do it. But the shift of making her goal something as measurable about getting to my first period class on time was dramatic. And then the other shift of choosing friends who were supporting her in her goal of getting to class on time and in staying in school all day, and then ultimately also staying after school to study when tutoring was available, produced a dramatic shift in Mary. And I talk about this because in the article, one of the things I mentioned is how powerful peers are to teens. 2 things are very strong driving forces for teens. One is their independence, their sense of independence, that they're doing what they want to do. It's their decision. So even if we agree with their decision, they have to feel that ultimately they're the driver and here they're in control. And the other one is peers. And it's very important to help teens think about how their peers are supporting them. And we never want to put down teens' friends and say, that friend's not good for you, even though we may think it. But a productive way to ask a question to a teen can be, which of your friends would support you most in that goal, whether it's a goal of improving academically or improving something, with a habit like getting up on time. Maybe it's a goal like making a cheerleading team. But which friend is going to support you? That's a productive way of asking that, because then that question, you're not putting down any of their friends, but they are going to think honestly about, right, okay, I have this one friend who I really love and they're my good friend, but they tend to not always encourage me to do the right thing. Whereas I have this other friend who's actually really helpful. And I've always been shocked by the difference that I've seen in posing that question versus, hey, do you think this person's really good for you, together to defend their friends. Their friends are so important to them. But I've been shocked by how honest teens are when I ask them, which person in your class or which friends in that group, I see your friends over there. There's 5 of your good friends. You always eat lunch with them. You hang out with after school with them. Which of them is going to support you in whatever this is, in getting your math homework done or coming to school on time? And the students, the teens, are always honest in pointing out the friend that I would also agree is usually the most responsible or the most supportive. So helping teens choose some kind of accountability partner is something that can really support them in accomplishing their goals. That could be you, but it's also very helpful to identify for them who's somebody who can partner with you. And again, I've been shocked by how when teens shift their friendships the slightest bit, what a big impact that can have on their goals. So I also wanted to talk about how we teach kids and teens how goal setting can be tied to their own happiness. Sometimes we as adults think that, oh, if I accomplish this, for example, if I get a raise, I'll be happy, or if I lose 15 pounds, I'm going to be happy. Sometimes we talk about relationships, if I get into a relationship, I'll be happy. These are things that both teens and adults think all the time. If we accomplish our goal, we'll be happy. And what a lot of research has discovered, and something I write about in the article, is that accomplishing the actual goal doesn't necessarily make you happy. You could feel a sense of accomplishment, a sense of pride, but often if the goal is attached to someone else's well-being or supporting others or some kind of altruism or some kind of awareness that your goal could make life better on this planet, even if just for one other person, or if it can improve a relationship, that is something that is good to point out to teens, that you're not necessarily going to be a happier person once you've saved up $2,000 for a used car. You're not necessarily going to be a happy person because you made the soccer team. It's not going to automatically transform you. You could have a period of happiness. But also think about how this goal might benefit those around you. So you making the soccer team, your presence on that team could actually make a difference for the other people there. You can support the coach on that team. And the reason I thought of that was recently in my position as a high school principal, we're near the beginning of the year, we're in September, and we're coaching kids on some of the behavioral goals that we want. We're trying to get kids to be attentive and be kind to one another, and even things in a high school like, we don't have a strict dress code, but we want kids to dress appropriately. And one of the things that in our high school, at least in a lot of New York City high schools, we want boys to take their hats off or do-rags or hoods off in the building. We teach them that that's a little bit more professional than kind of walking around with a hood or a do-rag on your head all the time. And as a principal, I sort of have the habit of saying, hey, let's take off the hat, and haven't really had that much discussion about it. But the other day I met with one of my students because I saw that, no matter how many times we talked about it, he just kept putting that hat back on, and it was an addiction. It was like sort of like, I need to have this on. And when he would wear it in class or put his head down, it's very hard for the teacher to read what's going on. It sets a tone of, I'm not fully present. So I took the student aside and I approached it differently. I said, I know that you want to be a great student, and I know that you happen to be a great student. But I also notice when you put that hat on and then tilt your head down and we can't see your face, your ability to have a great relationship with me, with your teachers, it goes away. That chance of your teachers starting off their day by saying, wow, let's say his name was Sammy, wow, Sammy, great job on that homework, or just so nice to see you this morning, good morning. I said, for me as your principal, sometimes I walk past your classroom and I see you doing great work. But my first comment to you, because we have this rule about hats, has to be, hey, I need you to take off your hat. And I can't even start to talk to you about what a great job you're doing as a student, or I can't start off by saying, hey, how was your weekend? What would life be like if all of your interactions with the adults in the school started off on a positive note about how you're doing or about something great you did in class? And this student, Sammy, looked at me and said, that would actually be great. And I said, how about we make a goal for just for today, that you take your hat and you put it somewhere secure. So he agreed, you know, it's a very concrete, measurable goal to put it in his backpack. And let's see how you do. Can you keep this hat off until 2:44, which is the minute our school ends? And he's like, I can do that. And I saw him several times throughout the day. And every time he kind of gave me a thumbs up, like, I'm doing it. I've cured my hat addiction. And he made it till the end of the day. At the end of the day, he shook my hand. And for me, the difference was giving him a reason that wasn't just about following a rule or getting something done, or even something that would just benefit him. It was actually about how his actions would benefit the relationships around him. And I know in the past I've learned, you know, as an educator, I've learned all kinds of things about how incentives help kids, and if they get some kind of material reward, they might go for something. And that can be true. Like, incentives can have a short-term effect. Studies have shown that. But the long-term intrinsic effect of doing a good job because it improves your relationships, or because it makes those around you feel good, or it benefits the life of somebody else, that is very appealing to teens. You might want to have these conversations one-on-one with them, because sometimes in front of their peers, especially boys who are very pressured in our society to seem masculine and seem tough and seem like maybe they don't care about anyone else, you might want to have these conversations well, you do want to have many of these conversations in private, so that they could admit to themselves that this is important to them, that having a great relationship with someone or doing something well is important. So I'm seeing some great comments too here. Thank you. But it was striking to me how much a student really responded to the idea of doing something for the benefit of good relationships. I talk a lot with my students about getting to class on time, especially in the morning, because it's New York City and there can be a lot of traffic and the subways are delayed, and kids often come to school a little bit upset. I'm 20 minutes late because the subway was late. And then we talk to them about how, you know, on days when it's raining or the weather's bad, they could leave earlier. But I did a little go around. I took a little informal survey of my students, and I said, for you, what is the benefit of coming to school on time? You know, if you set a goal to come to class on time, ultimately, what is the benefit? And so many of the students, the first thing they said was, you know, you don't miss information, you get the lesson, you'll get good grades. So those are all great reasons. But many of the students said, I'll get along better with the teacher, or I'll have a better relationship with my teacher, or my teacher will have more respect for me. And I hadn't expected that to be a response. But many of the students said that that was really important to them, which was having a strong relationship with a teacher. I'm going to go back to talking a little bit about how we help kids set measurable goals. I have a young lady at my school, I'll call her Jennifer, and she's passionate about dance. And her goal for a couple of years has been to start a dance club. But it seems like every time she started, she's like, I want this dance club, and I want to have a big performance at the end of the year, and I want everyone to the school to come to the performance. And she had mentioned things like this to me in the hallway, and I was always supportive and said, you know, that's great, let us know what you need. But over time, I saw that, you know, it's hard for her to get done. She doesn't really have a measurable goal. And so the year would come and go, and she would maybe get like 2 or 3 friends to do a dance routine with her, but then at the end of the year, she might advertise a performance last minute. A bunch of teachers would go, maybe a few friends, but it really wasn't this big showcase that was her goal. And this is a student, I talked earlier about teens that have ambitions. This is a teenager who has great ambitions. She's in honors classes. She drives herself hard. She tutors other kids. And so she wanted to start this dance club. So I finally took the time of sitting down with her and saying, you know, asking her some more specific questions. You know, can we come to an agreement about what a club should be? How many kids should be in a club? And together we came up with the idea of 15. She said, I think, maybe somewhere around 10 or 15. I said, I think 15 sounds about right. Because if you get 15 and then maybe some kids decide it's not for them, you still have at least 10 kids in a club. So we came up with a very measurable number for her to recruit. And then we said, when would a club meet? And she said, well, it's kind of hard to get kids to come during lunch because they like lunch, but what about after school? And we came up with an agreement that once a week for 2 hours after school would be a great amount of time for a club because there would be enough time for them to practice. So all of a sudden she has a measurable goal. She says, I'm going to get 15 kids to join a club and we're going to meet 2 hours a week. And then she came up with a plan that said, I'm going to visit classrooms and I'm going to advertise my club. So all of a sudden she had a very measurable step. So as opposed to, I'm going to start this amazing club and at the end of the year, everyone's going to think we're the most amazing dancers in the world, it became, I'm going to recruit 15 kids for a club. I'm going to visit every class over the next 2 weeks. And then we're going to start meeting once a week for 2 hours after school. And then as a support, I said that I was going to work with an arts organization to get an instructor to support them in their club so they have a little more guidance. So I gave that adult support. And I'm assigning myself her goal partner, her accountability partner. But that could really be anyone. That could be a parent. It could be maybe another teacher or another staff member, maybe a more mature student. So this was an example of how we can help our students, especially those who are very ambitious and have really big dreams. We can help them get numbers and get times and get hours. And we're also going to set a date for an end-year performance because then she can advertise it at the end of the year, and then it's more likely people are going to come. Finally, I want to talk about helping students set their goals and not our goals. That's something I talked about in the article. I have a student who is now a 12th grader. He's another ambitious student who has big dreams and wants to get into a great college. He is a very high scorer on exams, but we started the year by putting him in several advanced placement classes because meaning more advanced class, we thought he could handle the load. And we put him in advanced placement government class thinking this is a great kid for this class. He's opinionated, he writes well, he cares about these topics. And he came up to us and he said, I want to take advanced placement Spanish. And for me, my impression was, wait a second, Spanish, where did that come? How is that going to help you? I have my idea of what you'd be good at. But I had to slow myself down and say, okay, this is something you're passionate about. In the end, to me, it really makes no difference whether you're pursuing government or Spanish. If you're engaged in the class, then you're probably going to do really well. So we ultimately changed his program so that he could take what he wanted, and now he's doing great. And there's also a greater sense of rapport and respect between the two of us and between him and the counselors who made the change in his program, because he feels that he was heard. And sometimes as parents, as teachers, kids have goals that may not be our goals. So their goal might be, I want to get my driver's license by this time. There might be goals like that scare us a little bit, or I want to learn a certain skateboarding trick, or her goal could be something like a hairstyle, like I want to learn how to style my hair this way, or I want to save up enough money to buy these sneakers. And that might not be important to us, but ultimately it's really important to them. And as long as it's not a goal that is actually dangerous for them, this is an amazing opportunity to partner with our teens on their dreams, because ultimately they're far more likely to accomplish a goal if it's their dream and their ambition. So there's one more thing that I wanted to mention, which is when a teen sets a goal that really involves somebody else's decision. So your teen may say, I want to get into the University of Pennsylvania. I want to get this job. Maybe I want to get this job at a restaurant because I want to save money, or I want to make the basketball team, or I want to win a certain award. And it's important to help our kids, our teens, identify what is it that you would have to do in order to get that, and let's narrow that down. Because your teen may do an amazing job of practicing basketball to get on that team, or they may work so hard on their job application. But ultimately, if they don't get onto that team, or they don't get into that university, they can end up feeling very disappointed. So what you can help your teen do is identify what characteristics would someone have who would get onto that team. You know, so maybe for a basketball team, it's like they'd be able to dribble a certain way. They'd have this shooting skill. They'd know how to do these 5 things really well. So I'll practice these 5 things really well. And then at the end, if your teen has practiced those 5 skills to the best of their ability, their skills are going to get better. They may or may not be on the team, but you can honestly say to them, hey, you managed to accomplish this. You got onto this, you maybe didn't get onto this team, but look at your skill set. Maybe you'll get on next year, or maybe we can find another opportunity for you to play, or a club, or something outside of this, because you actually did accomplish your goal. But you know, in situations where there are competition, again, it's really important to help our teens identify something concrete that is around the criteria of getting that competition versus just, I'm going to get into this university, or I'm going to make this team, or I'm going to get this job. Because then at least they're building their skills, and ultimately they can develop a sense of pride. So I really enjoyed chatting with you. I've enjoyed seeing some of the comments here. There's some great links here to the article, and there are Big Life Journal, as always, puts together amazing templates and thinking tools for us to go through some of these ideas with our teens. So thanks again to the Growth Mindset for Kids group. I hope that you enjoy this chat, and I really enjoyed sharing all of these ideas with all of you. Have a great day. Thanks.